Self-care can be hard when you're neurodivergent. Caring for ourselves can feel like another job on our to-do list, which we struggle to attend to because of our executive functioning difficulties, meaning we could struggle to remember to do the thing. Or we might have a hard time knowing what we need and when because of our challenges identifying things like hunger, thirst and fatigue. Additionally, many of us also have difficulty recognising and processing our emotions. So while we might want to set and implement self-care goals, we might find it difficult knowing what they should be and how to make them actually happen. Unfortunately, it's easy to turn to unhealthy strategies instead when life feels like a struggle. Whilst these unhealthy strategies might give us immediate relief in the short term, in the long term, they don't benefit us. Finding a manageable way to incorporate self-care into my life has been my mission recently. As I let go of my less helpful coping strategies, I need to address my physical and mental health in order to be able to cope without them. As I look at my life and make self-care a priority, I'm going to take you along with me on this journey. Setting these goals and meeting these goals can be really difficult for us. So feel free to join me in making self-care a priority. Let's learn about this together. If you'd like to chat about that process, then you could consider joining my YouTube club, The Purple People. As well as exclusive monthly videos, we have a Discord server, which is a really welcoming community. I've added a self-care board to my server so that we can encourage each other and brainstorm ideas and see what works and how we're benefiting from this process. Right, let's dive in. Starting with nutrition. Food can be tricky for neurodivergent people. Between sensory sensitivities and the digestive issues that can be common for us, it's easy to slip into bad habits. Additionally, many of us forget to eat, perhaps because we have difficulty recognising our hunger cues, and also because we slip into hyperfocus and eating slips out of our minds. Remembering to eat is absolutely an issue for me. I find that once I've gone without food for too long, then my mood drops and I feel physically bad, but even then I don't necessarily make the connection between that and the fact that I haven't eaten. This can lead to me eating lots of sugary, salty, overly processed foods because I suddenly realise I'm hungry and those foods are easy to just grab. But in the long term, those foods are not providing my body with the nutrition that it needs. I also forget to drink water, and then I end up drinking lots of caffeinated fizzy drinks to make up for the energy that I'm not getting when I forget to eat. Since I've identified this issue with not remembering to eat, particularly when I get into work hyperfocus, I've decided to try and make sure I at least have a healthy breakfast. Breakfast is easier for me to remember because I've added it to my morning routine. So I have a morning routine of things that I do every day, and because they happen every day, they're part of my ritual and I find it easier to remember. As an added bonus, when I do eat breakfast, I'm more likely to experience and notice hunger cues later in the day. Whereas if I don't eat breakfast, or worse, I replace it with a fizzy caffeinated drink, then I'm less likely to feel hungry and remember to eat later. As to what I'll be eating, this is really personal and down to your preferences and sensory sensitivities. So I'd suggest writing a list of all the foods you know that you can eat and then identifying which of those foods are healthy options. For me, that's making homemade oat milk smoothies in the morning, and I can add loads of fruit, some veg, flax seeds, spirulina, a bunch of healthy stuff in one go, and it's super easy for me to make and have that nutrition at the start of the day when I'm feeling a little bit more energized to do that. Also, the flax seeds do help with my digestive issues too. I'm also trying to drink more water, so I've purchased a water bottle which I keep with me throughout the day, and then that reminds me to drink water. The next aspect of self-care that's challenging for me is exercise. Since I'm physically disabled with EDS and digestive issues, exercise is tricky because I get a lot of pain and fatigue. Over time, I've monitored my exercise levels and my symptoms to find the right amount of exercise for me that won't exacerbate my symptoms. So I take a short dog walk every day and I rest throughout that walk regularly, and I do around 15 minutes of exercise, mat-based exercise in the morning, which incorporates yoga and also my physiotherapy exercises. Again, I've made that 15 minutes of exercise part of my morning routine because I'm more likely to remember it and more likely to be motivated to do it at that time in the day. If I waited until later in the day, I'd likely be too unmotivated and fatigued to do it. So identifying which part of the day you are most energized for doing exercise is a really helpful first step. This will be different for everyone, so perhaps keeping an energy journal for a week will help you identify those sweet spots for adding in your exercise. I also try to avoid my typical neurodivergent all or nothing thinking when it comes to exercise, and if I need to miss a day because I'm fatigued or just unmotivated, I'm not going to beat myself up about that because that means I'll be more likely to just pick it up again tomorrow. Speaking of rest, another important aspect of self-care is to make sure that you are meeting your sleep needs and meeting your rest needs. This will vary for everyone, but generally speaking, we need between 7 and 9 hours of sleep and regular rest breaks through the day to avoid overload. I find the only way to achieve a reliable amount of sleep each night is to have a fixed bedtime and a bedtime routine in the hours leading towards that. Without that, I could easily find myself working or video gaming until the early hours of the morning and arriving in bed overstimulated and not ready to sleep. I chose my bedtime based on the time that I get up. So I need to get up about 7, which means that I go to bed at 10, which gives me enough time to relax, fall asleep, and achieve the amount of sleep I need before I need to get up. From around 9 p.m, I try to avoid blue light. Blue light is a portion of the visible light spectrum that affects alertness, hormone production, and sleep cycles. Since we usually get blue light from the sun, it stimulates the part of our brain that makes us feel alert. And additionally, it suppresses the release of the hormone melatonin, which makes us feel drowsy. Common sources of blue light include mobile phones, tablets, video games, and television. Now, don't worry, I'm not saying you can't watch TV or check your phone during that time if you need to. Instead, I suggest going into your settings and dimming the brightness levels, or you can even download an app that will reduce blue light for your phone or your tablet. I also use my weighted blanket in the evening, which helps me to relax ahead of sleeping. And I often have a banana as a bedtime snack because bananas contain magnesium, potassium, and B6, all of which work together to help you sleep. Did you know that B6 works to convert the amino acid tryptophan to the neurotransmitter serotonin, which controls levels of the aforementioned melatonin in the body? Rest breaks during the day are a great self-care strategy, but remembering to take them is an issue for me. I find attaching the rest breaks to things I already do means I'm more likely to take them. So, for example, I'll always have a rest break right after lunch. Another self-care strategy that I find incredibly useful is taking time out in nature. Time in green spaces is good for our bodies and our minds. Researchers comparing walks in forests with walks in urban areas found that the forest walkers had lower blood pressure, lower pulse rates, and lower levels of the stress hormone cortisol than the urban walkers. Putting research to one side, I absolutely feel better when I've spent some time in green spaces. When I feel stressed, I quite often go and sit in my garden in order to regulate, and my daily walks with Coco in the field are really helpful. Another aspect of self-care that's really important for me is finding balance. When I'm working or socialising too much, then I feel overloaded and stressed, and I tend to have more meltdowns and shutdowns. If I don't get enough alone time, then I become irritable and unregulated. But with a busy, fast-paced world that we live in, it can be really hard to go against the grain of busy equals successful and find a pace which works for us. Plus, my ADHD brain gets bored very easily and does not appreciate that doing more will not end well for me. So how do I find balance whilst ignoring my tendency to overschedule and not feel guilty in asserting boundaries about how much time I commit to work, family, and friends? The first step is identifying what healthy balance looks like for you. And this will depend on what your demands are day to day in your life. For example, since I live with 4 other people, that means I actually don't have a huge amount of energy left for socialising outside of that. So a social commitment once a week is plenty for me, but if you live alone, you might find that you need more social commitments. I'd suggest paying attention to how you're feeling with your current schedule, and if you're not feeling good, try making small adjustments and see what difference that makes to your well-being. To cope with my easily bored ADHD brain, I've started making changes to the way that I do the things that I already do, rather than adding in new things. This seems to keep it satisfied. For example, eating something different for lunch or switching up my leisure time activities. What's important is trying not to compare what works for you with what works for other people. You might think that because your partner or your friend can work 40 hours a week, that means that you should be able to too. Or that since your friendship group meets up several times a week, you have to keep up with that schedule. Being clear about what works for you and setting boundaries to make sure that you get what you need is not failure. It's insightful and smart, so be proud of yourself for recognizing those needs and supporting yourself. Before I go, I want to let you all know about my new merch. And did I intend to film the whole video wearing my t-shirt? Yes, I did. And do I have ADHD and did I completely forget? Yes, I did. And am I going to feel bad about it, or am I going to be compassionate to myself? I'm going to be compassionate to myself. Anyway, let me tell you about the merch. So I have a new merch design. I designed it myself and it's part of my ongoing collaboration with Born Anxious, which means that they will be made from organic cotton and they are label free, which makes them sensory sensitivity friendly. As well as the usual t-shirts and hoodies, this design also comes in a zip-up hoodie, which is great for regulating temperature. I'm really pleased with the design. Let me try and show you. It says, "My neurons rock," and has a brain, which I did draw with my very fair hands, and I wanted you to know that your neurons, they do rock. So wear the t-shirt, hoodie, zip-up hoodie with pride. I'll leave a link to my section of the Born Anxious website in the description box below, and that's where you can buy this design and you can still purchase my original design. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please click the like button, and if you really enjoyed it and you'd like to see more content like this, then please consider subscribing to my channel too. Thanks for watching. Bye bye!